When monetary policy committees, or what's it called, just called the central bank, do nothing with interest rates, the equities market don't seem to get some bearings on that. But the equity stocks like it when rates are down. That is a bit, or the inverse, theoretically speaking, is that fixed income instruments seem to like when rates are higher. So, what's in it for the fixed income or the debt market street, or yesterday's do nothing by the Monetary Policy Committee, keeping all key parameters unchanged, looking at the external and domestic factors. So we're taking this to the market streets. Let's cross over to the Nigerian Stock Exchange to discuss that a little bit later on the program. But again, to get the whole macroeconomic environment into what the discussion is, because the central bank yesterday spoke about the need to get the economy up and running and what the fiscal authorities need to do. What we're looking at on the fiscal side, which will trickle down to the market, is the economic recovery and growth plan, which is about 2 years in the making. What has been achieved, and how can we make this work, not just for the economy, but the financial markets, which the central bank talked about yesterday. Paul Alaje is a development economist and is joining us live, first from Abuja, from our Abuja studios. It's good to see you on the program, Paul. Good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for having me.
It's good to have you on the program. Very quickly, the road to ERGP is a little bit well known, but the plan itself, what do you make of it, and what has been achieved so far under the office of the Vice President, and of course the Secretariat sitting the Udoma's Ministry of Budget and National Planning?
Sorry, I didn't get that.
The question is this: the ERGP is the Center Economic Focus plan for this current administration. So how much do you think has been achieved, and the road which the ERGP has traveled under the office of the Vice President, and of course the Secretariat, which is sitting at the Udoma's Ministry of Budget and National Planning?
Yeah, thank you so very much. ERGP, as you mentioned, has done 2 years, so it is nice for us to say that we are looking at the half-year tenure performance of ERGP. Now, ERGP has considered what 2016 growth looks like, which was in the negative. But if you look at what economic growth rate has been projected by ERGP right now, is not what we are having. So looking at the key indicators, first, you say, we may want to look at what is happening to unemployment as projected by ERGP. We may want to look at what is happening to inflation. We may want to look at what is happening to growth, particularly the real GDP annual growth rate. If you look at all of these indicators, about 7 economic parameters, if you like, the only one that ERGP seems to have performed excellently well is that of inflation. So when you look at exchange rate stability, maybe not really well. But when you look at inflation, when you look at unemployment and underemployment, ERGP has projected a lower inflation and unemployment rate. But that is not what we are seeing now. Unemployment and underemployment, in fact, is higher than what is projected for 2017. You recall that Nigeria Bureau of Statistics has released a 10.8% unemployment rate for the 3rd quarter, and in fact, it has also reported about 21% underemployment rate. The growth as we speak is 1.5, which was not 1.5% growth rate, which was not what was envisaged by ERGP. ERGP has thought Nigeria will be looking between 3 to 4% GDP growth rate, and by 2020 we'll get to that magic number of 7% growth rate. So when you look at all of these, I think there is still more to do with ERGP, and one that readily comes to mind, is that the entire federation has not adopted ERGP as an economic document that can bring Nigeria from poverty or from problems to prosperity. So of all the states, arguably 4 states have adopted ERGP. So if you look at all the parameters, because the bottom line, whether the policy looks good on paper or not, what economists are bothered about, what economists are concerned about is, has it changed the parameters? What does all of this mean? Yesterday, when NPC retained rate, it was a difficult decision for an economy whose inflation have started to increase with growth reducing. So, and if you look at that theoretically, if that persists for 2-3 more sittings of NPC, then we might be talking about a situation where we are faced with slum and an economic redundancy of some sort. So I quite understand. I understood the decision, and I also predicted the committee might have to sit on the fence because the economic situation is not very clear. Coupled with the fact that ERGP and other projections have considered that 2018 being a pre-election year, perhaps we are going to have higher inflation, and we're also going to have a boost in economic activity because all of this will be driven by politics. But this perhaps is not what we are seeing, particularly with the second quarter GDP report that we got a few months ago coming from Nigeria Bureau of Statistics. So to some extent, yes, ERGP has done some of these things, particularly as it affects the monetary angle, which is inflation and exchange rate stability. But when you look at the delay in passage of budget, it calls for a lot of concern. When you look at what is happening to flood, this is flood for God's sake. It is not, it is water coming from hub, among others. So it seems as if Nigeria is not really ready for development. ERGP is not a bad document, but implementation of it. And if you go to page 34 of ERGP, it will show you that the implementation is poor because ERGP has written in the document that if you only introduce basic macroeconomic reforms, you are going to have growth of about 1.5%. But if you implement ERGP, then you'll be having between 3 to 4%. Now, what have we have? Did we have 3 to 4%? So we can say that ERGP implementation has perhaps not be very interesting.
We need to implement the ERGP, Paul, a lot more vigorously, and that's my personal view, and I think that's the view of so many folks out there. As you put it, this is not a bad document or a working document in itself. Look at the various focus labs that's been created, and a lot of folks were enthused. Some of you who are economists, professionally speaking, and all that were enthused by what the ERGP was. There were a lot of collaborations in putting the document together from private sector, government officials, even state government, including multilateral and bilateral agencies who are part of the document itself. But do you think there are factors that are coming outside the ERGP document that are beginning to put the ERGP under some pressure, as it were? For example, the recurrent violent attacks in the north central, to the northeast, and a little bit to the western part of the northern part of the country. And of course, no one can control the nature, as it were. So flooding this year will be another major factor, which MPC highlighted yesterday.
Yeah, thank you so very much once again. I think, yes, there could be some things that have not been envisaged by ERGP. But more importantly, we might need to consider what is it that India got correctly for India to have handed over the baton of most poor people, I mean, the country with largest number of poor people in the world. What have they done differently? What has China done differently to have handed over the baton to India in the first place, and India now handing it over to Nigeria? Now, it is not enough for us to look at some of these issues. Countries have issues. There are countries that are ravaged with earthquakes, not even floods. There are countries where conflicts are there from time to time, not just, say, clashes between herders and farmers. Now, beyond all of this, the planning process itself are things that I think policymakers, particularly in government offices, I mean, the authorities should consider. Now, if you earn 1 naira, whether I earn 1 naira or you earn 1 naira in Lagos, there are at least 4 ways we have to spend the money. So you have marginal propensity to consume. That is the tendency that you will spend the money on local consumption. Number 2 is marginal propensity to save. You are going to save proportion of your 1 naira earn. The third one is marginal rate of savings. That is the proportion with which you are going to save, or marginal rate of taxation, I beg your pardon. The proportion you are going to use to pay taxes from the money earned. And lastly, marginal propensity to import. What I have suggested on print and media and so many other platforms is Nigeria needs to look at what China did and what India has done, or what India has done recently that have started to boost India even on ease of doing business faster than what Nigeria appears to be on 145 right now, is that India realized that the country has huge population, just like China has huge population, and for Africa, Nigeria has huge population. Now, these countries have said that since our population is basically a consuming population, what policy are we going to make to drive our country out from consumption to production, such that we can have two policies run side by side, which is export promotion and import substitution. Now, it is not a cause for Africa. I've not seen any law that says because we're in Africa, therefore we must farm. In England, in the 18th century or 17th century, England was known as the farm hub, particularly for the entire Europe. But England understood that it is not farming that will take the country out, to prosperity from problem of some sort. And that's why you have the Mathusian theorem use agriculture, because that was what was predominantly available. So if Nigeria is still talking about agriculture now, it calls for a lot of worry. Why? Crude oil, in the classification of production from primary, secondary, and tertiary, crude oil is in the primary. You need to refine it for it to become secondary. Agriculture, as it's been mentioned in Nigeria today, and not just only Nigeria, in Senegal, among other countries we study, is also primary. The large number of jobs, decent jobs, are available in manufacturing and service. Other countries could farm. We have huge vast land doing nothing. I agree with that. But those farmland, the policy should be, how do we convert them to production hub? We have Benue, where you have a lot of produce, fruits and so on, farm produce coming out. How do we locate more farms in Benue for Benue to produce? Because bottom line is, many people will not understand inflation as you understand it. What many people want to see is a lot of people are out of jobs. So of all of these macro variables, economics will do its job by maintaining price stability and exchange rate stability. What I think policymakers should do, particularly fiscal arm, is how do we make all of this policy beyond what ERGP is currently envisaging and the limitation around it to create jobs. So to your question that says maybe some things have not been envisaged by ERGP, I agree, and that is why there are policies that have been made, like the green wall, which I think government should have considered before.
Paul, I agree with you, but we've been driving this on the federal government side. You alluded to this in your statement, in your comments earlier in this conversation, and we have just about 2 minutes to wrap this up, that the state governments down the line are yet to really buy in significantly into this policy arrangement. This is very curious, and I keep asking every one of you guys, economists that I meet, why is this so? Why can't we get, or maybe what do you think the federal government should do? Should they bring all the state governors or the commissioners of finance and economic and budget back into the same room? Should we do a national road show? What should be done for us to get the entire federation buy into this and sing from the same hymn book of the ERGP, chapter 1, stanza 1? Let's sing.
Yeah, well, I think it's the leadership recruitment process. Many people want to get to office because they know at the end of the month they're going to get something from Abuja. But when people understand that you are coming to office as the chief economic policy makers, and you preach that or you teach that more to the people that are going to recruit them to office in the first place, then maybe we will have new set of leaders who understand perhaps how economy works and know that you are not in office because you want to wear big clothes or small clothes, or because you can talk politics, but also how to bring prosperity to the table of your people. ERGP as a document is not bad at all. It's a good document, but I guess it's in the weak hands.
Okay, we need to go. Thank you very much, Paul Olaje. Thank you very much, Alaje from Abuja Studios, from SPM. Professionals, he's a senior economist and a development economist. Thank you very much for your time today. Let's take that to the part of that to the market street, so we'll come back after the break.